Dear learners, today we are going to learn about wildlife tourism. After this session, you will be able to understand about wildlife and tourism. You will also come to know about the importance of wildlife in tourism. We will also discuss about the classification of wildlife tourism, and at last we will discuss about wildlife tourism in India. So, when we talk about wildlife tourism is an element of many nations' travel industry centered around observations and interactions with local animals and plants life in their natural habitat. While it can include eco and animal friendly tourism, safaris, hunting and similar high intervention activities also falls under the umbrella of wildlife tourism. So, wildlife tourism in its simplest sense is interacting with the wild animals in their natural habitat, either by actively, example can be hunting or collections, or passively, example can be watching or photography of the animals. Wildlife tourism is an important part of the tourism industry in many countries, including African countries, South American countries, even countries like Australia, India, Canada, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Malaysia, Sri Lanka and Maldives. It has experienced a dramatic and rapid growth in the recent year worldwide, and many elements are closely aligned to ecotourism and sustainable tourism. As a multi-million-dollar international industry, wildlife tourism is often characterized by the offering of customized tour package and safaris to allow close access to wildlife. So, wildlife tourism is more that travel to enjoy or appreciate wildlife. It also includes contributions to conservation and community project in developing countries, and environmental education and awareness through the establishment of codes and conducts of wildlife tourists, as well as the various components of travel industry. So, wildlife tourism mostly encompasses on non-conjunctive interaction with wildlife, such as observing and photographing animals in their natural habitat. It also includes viewing of and interacting with captive animals in zoo or wildlife parks, and can also include animal riding like elephant riding, and conjunctive activities such as fishing and hunting, which are generally not comes under the definitions of ecotourism and may compromise animal welfare. It has the recreational aspect of adventure tourism also, and usually supports the value of ecotourism and natural conservation program. And wildlife tourism is tourism based on encounter with non-domesticated animals. These encounters can occur in either the animal's natural environment or in captivity. It includes activities historically classified as non-consumptive, such as viewing, photographing and feeding, as well as those that involves killing or capturing animal, particularly hunting in terrestrial environment, and recreational fishing in the aquatic environment areas. Wildlife tourism can entail attractions at fixed sites, tours, experience available in association with tourist accommodations, or it can occur as unguided encounter by independent travelers. We restrict our definitions of wildlife to fauna, that is animals, to coincide with the general use of the term by the tourism industry and public. So, that means when we talk about tourism industry, most of the people, when we talk about wildlife, they think about animal in tourism industry, and the term animal is defined in the biological sense to means any member of the kingdom Animalia except human beings, and it thus includes not only land dwelling vertebrates such as mammals, birds and lizards, but also aquatic vertebrates that usually live in the sea or inland water, such as platypus like fish and turtles. It also includes invertebrates such as glowworms, butterflies, corals as well as starfish. Wildlife is not restricted to animals that are native to the country in questions such as kangaroos and emus in Australia, but also includes the exotic animals whether held in captive or introduced into the natural environment either deliberately or accidentally, such as feral pigs or camels in Australia. The term non-domesticated is preferred to wild because it is unclear whether the latter terms applies to the species or its settings. Example, tiger in a zoo is non-domesticated species, but some might argue it is no longer wild. And wildlife tourism can be applied at a number of hierarchical scales. Its application is complicated by the fact that tourism experience and product features wildlife as only one component of travel package. At the lowest hierarchical level, wildlife tourism is that component of tourism experience or product that is based on wildlife. As the next level, it can be applied to tourism products for convenience. Whale watching tours and the eco tour that includes wildlife are both considered wildlife tourism products, and it can also apply to business that offers a wildlife tourism product. Thus, a zoo and farm stay business that includes viewing of wild animals among other experience are both considered wildlife tourism business. At the highest level, some places such as Galapagos Island and Kenya can reasonably be described as a wildlife tourism destination. As a tourism product category, wildlife tourism overlap with other classes of tourism, particularly nature-based tourism, special interest tourism and ecotourism. The extent of this overlap depends on exactly how these terms are defined, and we consider the most wildlife tourism is a subset of nature based tourism, since animals are a subset of nature, although zoo and other attractions where wildlife are kept in captivity are not seen by some other authors as nature based tourism. Wildlife tourism can be considered a form of ecotourism when it occurs within the context of nature based activities that provides environmental interpretations and adopts environmentally reasonable practices. In cases where a tourist travels to a particular destination primarily for the purpose of having a wildlife experience, then wildlife tourism can be seen as a form of special interest tourism. Now coming to the major part, we will discuss, that is the natural area tourism. And when we talk about natural area tourism, it normally depends on tourism in natural settings. And natural area tourism is characterized into three major parts, and that is tourism in the environment, tourism about the environment and tourism for the environment. And when we talk about tourism in the environment, then the examples can be adventure tourism, it can be trekking, it can be hiking, it can be other activities which we do in the environment. And another one we have, that is tourism about the environment. So when we talk about the environment, examples can be nature based tourism and wildlife tourism. And tourism for the environment is actually for the environmental purpose, so that's why ecotourism and sustainable tourism are the part of this tourism. Now coming to the nature based tourism, when we talk about nature based tourism, it is tourism about the environment, occurs in natural setting but has the added emphasis of fostering understanding and conservation of natural environment, in which viewing nature is the primary objective, and the focus is usually upon the study and or to observations of the abiotic part of the environment, like non-living part of the environment, like rocks and the landform. And we have another one, that is biotic component of it, that is a living component of the environment, and that is flora and fauna. Now we will talk about wildlife tourism, which is actually the part of flora and fauna, because people normally go to a particular place to see flora and fauna of that area. Like wildlife tourism can be broadly defined as trip to the destination with the main purpose of visit being to observe the local fauna. This therefore implies that wildlife tourism includes other niche market such as bird watching, tiger watching, rhino watching as well as lion watching. Okay, now we will discuss about the classifications of wildlife tourism. And wildlife tourism includes a very diverse set of experience, and classifying different forms or attributes of this experience can be useful for a variety of purposes. So, the following main forms of wildlife tourism are, we will discuss one by one. So, first when we will discuss about wildlife watching tourism. The tourism that is planned primarily for the watching of wildlife is considered as the most common. In this case, the individual just plan their tourism where they are able to observe various forms of wildlife. In some cases, individuals are involved in interaction with free ranging animals, and for instance giving milk to elephant calves. The main purpose of wildlife watching tourism is to feel pleasurable through getting engaged in activities which one has not enjoyed before. Like for example, Thailand, people go to Thailand especially in tiger temple so that they can feed tigers calf. Interactions and watching of wildlife give individual experience, and they enjoy especially when they observe that apart from birds and animals that they observe in their own area, and there are other different species as well which needs to be observed. So, second one is captive wildlife tourism. Captive wildlife tourism is when individuals view animals and birds in man-made confinements. Zoos are regarded as the principal places where individuals are able to observe captive wildlife animals. Zoos are mostly established in urban areas, and in these places animals are kept in enclosure and cage, and the individual usually observe them from a distance. And the other area where one is able to observe captive wildlife tourism are sanctuaries, wildlife parks, aquaria, circuses and so organized by mobile wildlife exhibitors. One of the area is in captive wildlife tourism, the individuals are safe and they do not have to be concerned regarding being harmed, and on the other hand when wildlife is not captive, then individual usually develop fear and vulnerability when the wildlife is not captive. Then usually it is watched through vehicles, mainly buses and vans. Another we have, that is hunting tourism. Hunting tourism is the wildlife tourism that is carried out primarily for the purpose of hunting of wildlife animals and birds. In India, among tribal communities, in most cases hunting tourism is common, and as they are dependent upon the natural environment conditions and the wildlife for the substance of their living conditions, and they usually hunt wildlife animals for the purpose of fulfilling their diet and nutrition requirement, and in some cases they even obtain the skin of wild animals for making provision of clothes and rags, and this type of wildlife tourism is still prevalent among the individuals belonging to the tribal communities in different parts of India. Hunting tourism is carried out by the individuals to obtain body part of the animals so that they are able to produce items, sell them and thus earn profitability. Now, the another one after hunting tourism is fishing tourism, and fishing tourism is regarded as the form of tourism that focuses upon collecting fishes, and the individual primarily residing near the coastal area and nearby the water bodies usually get engaged in fishing. The skill and make use of proper techniques that are required to collect fish, so that is fishing. And the main purpose of fishing is not only to meet the nutritional requirement of the individual, but they are also to generate a source of income and hence adopt it as their profession. In India, there are a number of individuals who carried out fishing, and they usually sell it in the market and hence are able to meet their daily needs and the requirements. Now coming forward, we have consumptive wildlife tourism. Consumptive wildlife tourism is the one that involves killing or removal of animals or making use of any of their body part, like hunting, fishing, bullfighting and other sports are regarded as the aspect of the involves of consumptive wildlife tourism. For example, ivory is the tusk of elephant and it is used to make jewelry, decoration items and so forth. Leather is obtained from the skin of animals and is used the manufacture of items such as purses, bags, belts, etc. Another one is wildlife dependent wildlife tourism. Wildlife dependent wildlife tourism take places when the individual developed interest and curiosity regarding the observance of wildlife. When individual plan wildlife tourism primarily for the purpose of observing different species of animal and birds, then it is regarded as wildlife dependent wildlife tourism. The observance of wildlife may take place due to various reasons, and this includes either collecting information for educational purposes or implementation of research study or generate awareness due to the procession of interest or just for the purpose of recreation or leisure. And in this type of tourism, the individual plan their trips primarily for the purpose of observing animals. Wildlife photographers is one of the career that individual adopt, and in this case their primary job are focused upon taking pictures of various form of wildlife and then they put them in magazines for their benefit. And another one is wildlife independent wildlife tourism. Wildlife independent wildlife tourism take place when the individual plans a tourism without having any intention of observing wildlife. When individual plan a holiday to some destinations, then they are usually involved in number of activities, and this includes sightseeing, getting engaged in the leisure activities of various type, and they plan visit to all the types of different places which they have not visited before. And this includes historical places, this also includes regional religious places, monuments, and within the course of their visit they come across the observance of wildlife. When time permits, after the completion of their task and activities, then individually observe wildlife, but their intention was not the observance of wildlife, hence it is known as wildlife independent wildlife tourism. Environment where the interactions occurs. In most cases, wildlife tourism is regarded when the interaction takes place among the individual within a particular type of environment. It has been found that individuals who are residing in the rural and the tribal communities usually put large amount of emphasis upon the wildlife, and it has been found out that numerous amount of individuals have lost their lives due to their interaction with the wild animals. When one is getting engaged in wildlife tourism, then it is of utmost significance that one should be cautious and also take precautions in order to keep themselves safe, and the individual also are primarily dependent upon the natural environment conditions and obtain items from the forest are the one who are required to take preventive measures. And principal type of encounters in India, there have been development of laws and policies that put main emphasis upon the preservation of wildlife. Wildlife is regarded as the integral aspect of natural environment condition, and in rural areas rearing of livestock is regarded as the major responsibility of the individual, and when they have to travel to distant places they make use of bullock carts. Agriculture is regarded as the major occupation of the individual for the purpose also, and they make use of livestock, and the rural women primarily get engaged in producing milk products which they sell to generate income. Hence, one of the area that is regarded as the principal type of encounter is getting involved in the rearing of livestock in order to make use of them to sustain one's living. Wildlife farm productions activities means that individuals in these same cases are involved in wildlife farm production activities, and this includes all the activities that are involved in the maintenance of wildlife within the farm. And the various activities that individuals are required to carry out includes feeding them, taking care of their healthcare need and requirements, providing them proper shelter, keeping them safe from the weather conditions, and utilizing them in the appropriate manner. Excessive use of wildlife may also result in deterioration of their health condition. Hence, it is vital for the individual to ensure that the wildlife does not get involved in any types of hazardous tasks and should be made to work in accordance to their capacities. Okay, learners, now we are going to study about wildlife tourism in India. And when we talk about India, India is not only just incredible in terms of climate, nature, culture, historical places, religions. India is also dotted one of the popular wildlife destination among the tourists, and wildlife tourism is gearing up in India and obtaining global recognitions, and from ancient elephant to lions, Bengal tiger, sloth bear, Indian rhinos, and leopards to hundreds of bird species, tourists from all across the world are attracted to visit the country. The total area of India's protection wilderness is around 1,40,000 square kilometer, which constitutes of 4% of the country's total land area, and with 104 national parks and 500 plus wildlife sanctuaries. One of the recent ongoing buzz around the town is the upward graph of the Indian wildlife tours. However, of late Indian governments and the popular have awakened to the frightening danger over the existence of these wildlife species and have brought them under the protections of nourishing plant. The emphasis has not only been on protecting and nourishing wildlife in reserve jungles and forests, also developing awareness and the protections so the man and the animal persist to live in the peace and the harmony. And the country's protected wildlife consists of 75 national parks and 421 sanctuaries, of which 19 falls under the purview of Project Tiger, and its geographic and the climatic diversity makes it the home of over 360 mammals and 1,300 bird species, many of which are exceptional to the subcontinent. The land of tiger and elephant, the peacock and the rhinos, India's wildlife is delight for the natural lovers, and the wildlife parks and the sanctuaries sprawled in southern, western, eastern and the northern part of India. India is reputed to be the home to the finest wildlife and the bird sanctuaries and tiger reserves, which offers an amazing array of wildlife. There are few popular Project Tiger wildlife reserves at Ranthambore, Bandhavgarh and Kanha national parks. As a result of positive steps, the Indian wildlife conservation and existing wildlife sanctuaries and national parks have seen a significant rise in the number of tigers which were once on the verge of extinction. In India, there is some finest bird sanctuaries, namely are Bharatpur, Ragannathu, Vembanan bird sanctuary. Other wildlife sanctuaries such as Sipuri Natural Reserve, the Tiger Reserve at Nagarhole Wildlife Sanctuary and Banarghat National Park are also prominent and quite popular among the wildlife lovers. These nature refuges are home to several rare animal species including lions, tigers, elephants, leopards, cheetahs, monkeys, deer, sloth bear, wild boars, rhinoceros, black bucks, cobras and peacocks are the prime wildlife attraction in India. Discover the vividness of the flora which provides protections and food to these animals. All these are so exceptional and exciting in themselves that you will be forced to revisit the wildlife region time and again. The wildlife attraction of India are very appreciating, and Indian wildlife preserve number of endangered and rare species and waiting for you to explore them. And This would invite wildlife to their very doorstep and give their guest the close to nature experience for which most people are willing to pay a premium. Apart from financial benefit to local, this would dramatically reduce incidents of human animal conflicts which are largely triggered by wildlife farmers interactions. Wildlife tourism has averaged 15% growth in India, mirroring many countries. This growth is reflected in the case in visitors to many Indian protected animals. Alternatively, wildlife tourism can also contribute positively to conservation and economy. For conservations to be successful in the long term, it must be promoted both inside and outside protected areas and must be integrated with the realities of the modern economies and meeting people's need. And well managed nature based tourism generates revenues for the conservation of natural habitat and wildlife and economy as a whole. And the research study catalogs the tourism and management practices at national parks as important and popular wildlife attractions located at one of the hotspot of the diversity. Protected areas from large wilderness reserves to small sites for particular species and reserve for the control uses. The wildlife sanctuaries, biosphere reserves and national parks are designated place for protecting the wildlife, plants, animals and natural habitats, and living organisms exist among wherever from mountain peaks to the ocean depth, from desert to the rainforest. Now we will discuss about the difference between wildlife sanctuaries, biosphere reserves and natural parks. So first of all we will discuss about wildlife sanctuaries. It is the place where sacred species are kept and it is not open for general public, unlike zoos, and in other words we say that it tries not to allow any activity that could place the animal in an unduly stressful situation. So that's about wildlife sanctuaries. Now coming to the characteristics of wildlife sanctuaries, it is a natural area which is reserved by the government or private agencies for the protections of particular species. The area is designated for the protections of wildlife and only animals are conserved, could be private property, and it can come under the category called protected area, and the protected area are declared under the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. So that's about a wildlife sanctuary. Now coming to national parks. When we talk about national park, it is a reserved area of land owned by the government, and area is protected from the human exploitations, industrializations and pollution. Here in national parks, no cutting or grazing is allowed, not outside species are also allowed, and it comes under the category called protected area. The protected area are declared under the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. International Union for Conservation of Nature and its World Commissions on Protected Area has defined its category two types of protected area and national parks in India. Now coming to the Biosphere Reserve, the International Coordinating Council of UNESCO designated the Biosphere Reserves for natural area from November 1971, and there are 18 biosphere reserves in India. Characteristics of Biosphere Reserve: this is a notified area which covers a large area of land which may cover multiple national parks, sanctuaries and reserves as well, and area are meant for conservation of biodiversity of a specific area. And there are three main areas in biosphere reserves, that is core area, buffer area and marginal area, and no outside species allowed for the conservation and the research process. It is internationally recognized within the framework of UNESCO Man and Biosphere programs and nominated by the national government. The Ministry of Environment and Forest provides financial assistance to the respective states government for the conservation of landscape and biological diversity and cultural heritage. Okay, so that is all from my side. So just to summarize about the topic wildlife tourism, here we have discussed about wildlife tourism, the meaning of wildlife tourism. We have also discussed about the characteristics of wildlife tourism. Apart from that, we have discussed about the wildlife tourism in India, and at last we have also discussed about the difference between national parks, wildlife sanctuaries and biosphere reserves. So that's all from my side. Thank you.